Pegboard nerds gonna get 'em all. Living life for the next drop. Pegboard nerds gonna get 'em all. Living life for the next drop.
Drop it and run. I just need a way out, a blinding light. No need to fight. I must find a way to leave, a way to breathe, to breathe.
Good morning. Hello, hello, hello. Hi there. Yeah, we are doing this today. We will be. Oh, I dropped that a bit low, apparently. There we go. How's everybody doing? We are going to be doing some streaming today. And the goal for today is to look at doing some components work. So, well, thank you for joining me. For anybody who's might be on the stream right now, we are going to just need to drop back a little bit there. There we go. Yeah. So, yeah, today we are dual streaming on YouTube and Twitch at the same time, so that's fun. And kind of, getting to get all the settings up, make sure everything's working as intended. And so far, so good. Everything seems to be operating as intended. And part of the goal for today is actually Serverless Creative Day at Serverless Inc., where the team gets a chance to try to do some new interesting stuff we haven't done before. It's kind of like our version of the Google 20%. And I thought I would be sharing my creative day with folks. Yeah. And the goal today, like I said, is to go ahead and try to build our component for the first time. I've kind of dabbled with building a serverless component a little bit. But I've never really gone all the way through and finished building one. So it'll be interesting to go ahead and do that. And I see we do have some folks here. So hello. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. If anybody has something that they want to ask or anything that they want to share, doesn't even have to be related to the stream. Please feel free. Let's have a nice chat and discussion today. In the past, we've done serverless, sort of these more informal serverless live type stream events, and they were reasonably popular. And this is just, I guess, an extension of that, where we're trying to just enhance that to a degree. So yeah, I'm actually just keen to actually get the ball rolling. So let me take a look at grabbing ourselves a browser window here to get started with. And it looks like I'm going to need to do that and that. Checking again, no dropped frames. CPU seems to be fine. Cool, we are all good. So yeah, let's. Oh yeah, as you can see, I'm using Manjaro, and I want to go take a look at some information about components. And the way to do that is I'm going to go to the documentation page here. Let me just change these levels slightly on things like the music. There we go. Bump that back up. There we go. All right. So one of the things I want to look at is Serverless Components is a sort of one of the newest things that have come out of serverless. It is a way to deploy serverless infrastructure without using the main full-fat serverless framework. It's a way to get a very opinionated way to, fulfill some use cases and stuff like that. So it's pretty useful. It's got some really useful ways to do things like deploy very quick websites, express APIs and stuff. But today I want to see about making my own. And this is where we come to the building components portion. And one of the other things I think might be important to do is to actually go ahead and grab an existing component and look at how it's built. We can even just look at it in GitHub. We don't have to necessarily yank it down to a local machine. So I'm going to go take a look. And the basics about how these components work is that when you define your component like this, you're building a you're putting together the serverless component.yaml, which describes your component. To take a peek at that, and really what this does is define for anybody who's going to use your component what it contains, what it looks like. So at deployment time, it's going to look for the inputs here. Define the inputs that the user needs to have in their serverless.yaml file when they're consuming your component. The memory option. There's a default setting here, which means this is optional. Timeout as well. There's a default, which makes it optional. Description is required, so you do have to have a description. Or no, there's a default. Sorry, that's the default. Yeah. No. This is a field. Okay. So here's again a default. So this is yeah, awesome. It's actually really cool. Okay, so what I'm planning on building, so maybe let's just go back to like the beginning of what we're actually going to build today. I want to build a serverless component, and it's going to be, in some ways, similar to the Express component that's available right now. And the Express component, what this lets you do is build your own APIs using Express. And a lot of folks do use Express when they build serverless APIs, but they have to then use the serverless framework and configure it in a very specific way to make Express run really nicely in Lambda, which, that's fine. But it can be a little fiddly and a little bit annoying maybe to try and get all those settings right and have everything working, all the pathing and everything like that. So the alternative is to use the Express component, which does essentially the same thing, except it's far easier to use. Just you basically point at your app.js where your Express server is, and it deploys that into a Lambda function for you, and you're done. The idea that I want to do is also going to be deploying some code, but it's going back to a specific serverless pattern. There's a pattern right now using the serverless framework that consists of a RESTful API with individual API gateway endpoints pointing to individual Lambda functions, and then an asynchronous process in the background that helps essentially add events in your service into an event stream through SNS often, or Event Bridge, something like that other services you might be deploying can then consume if they need to. I thought, why not? Let's do that into a component. So we'll take a look at that. And I think the Express component here is going to be a great way to, get up to speed with building a proper component for this. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to look here at yeah, so there's some documentation here in GitHub on building your own component. I'm going to come back here. It consists of serverless.component.yaml, which is required to define what your component is and the data that it needs and elements that it contains. And then the serverless.js file, which is what actually controls what gets deployed into somebody's AWS account. Serverless components only run in the cloud. They don't run locally. And I'm getting back on. There we go. There we go. All right. So components run in the cloud, not locally, which is fine. Publisher to test it. That's fine. And here's an example of a component.yaml file, so we'll be looking at that. Here's an example of a minimal serverless.js, which is perfect. We'll be using that. We'll also be using just looking through quickly. Okay, just goes through some of the basics. You probably want to add a remove section as well. And right, so then this has utilities. So we're going to be seeing a lot about how to do this using the Express component here, I think. All right, how about we get started with some basics? So let's hop to the terminal here. And I'm going to make a directory, and I'm just going to call this my... what should I call this? The API async... you want to call it event. Probably going to change the name later, but at least we've got that for now. So the first thing I want to do is I want to open up an editor here. So that one, just so that everybody can kind of see what's going on while we do this. Let's hop into presentation mode. It just makes things a little easier and clearer to see. Here we go. Awesome. Right, so we don't have any files yet, obviously. First one that we probably want to do, though, is a new file. We call this serverless dot component YAML. Let me just go back here. Yeah, serverless.component.yaml. And oh no, back there. So we've got our serverless component.yaml. And now what I think I'm going to do is to keep things easier so we can see what this configuration looks like. I'm actually going to grab this existing configuration here, because I'm going to be doing a lot of the same things. I'm going to be uploading code into Lambda, which is basically what the Express component does. Let's go make some tweaks. Obviously, we want this to be, I'm going to call this API async and version. So our version is obviously going to be dev. So I know this about developing components. When you make it version dev, it's not actually going to be incrementing. You don't need to increment the counter. And the reason why you don't want to do that is because you're still in development. You're going to be making changes constantly. So you don't want to have to constantly increment a version counter until you at least have a public version available for consumption. This is going to be me. That's my GitHub username. I'm just going to use that. The org that is going to be associated with, Now this org is based on the app.serverless.com org that you want. Oh, app.serverless.com. Yeah, here we go. If anybody joining, if you have any questions or feedback or comments, even unrelated to what you see on the screen, please feel free. So I'm going to switch to different org because we just need to pick an org that we can associate with. I don't know about this. Let's go find. I'm going to create a new org here. I'm going to call this Gareth Components, just so I have something unique. Oh, it doesn't. Yeah, there we go. Org name. Good. So Gareth Components. I'm going to name that here. Right, so the description I'm going to put is deploys an entity-based API with asynchronous messages to SNS. I'm going to keep it to SNS for now. We may maybe consider EventBridge in future. Use some keywords there. API gateway. Let's put some more. Gateway. And I can't touch stuff at the moment because I've got this microphone in front of me, so it makes it a little tricky. I don't have a repo at the moment. And main is going to be source, so that's fine. Means let me just create that folder quickly before I forget. So we have a source folder. Store that source code. Okay, so this is where we define now our actions that we allow. This is essentially to help with CLI, because the CLI is dynamic. You can do CLI stuff at any time. Yeah, so we obviously have a deploy action that we need to customize. And this is going to look for specific inputs in our in the user's serverless.yaml file that they include when they try to deploy this. So this is going to be deploy your REST API to AWS and set up the connection. Okay. Okay, so it's going to define. Nice. There's actually some really cool features here. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to leave a lot of this alone. I'm going to take a look at the existing component here, because one of the things I want to check. Okay, so if I come back here. So one of the things I want to look at, so these are the default files for this components. So if I go back here and take a look at the serverless.js. So serverless.js is the single file that controls what happens when you type a deploy command. So here, for example, is a deploy function, and this is all the stuff that happens with the express component. I want to see what it'll do is it'll check if the credentials exist. So that's a good thing. We'll probably add that kind of thing in. Express app. Okay, so that's just checking if there's a domain change. We probably won't have support for custom domains, at least in the beginning of our component. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to check that there's a timeout setting, so can it be greater than 30 seconds? Makes sense. API gateway doesn't allow greater than 30 seconds anyway. We want to check that name. It sets it or uses the previous. Okay. Checks for the region or sets the default. Then it gets clients, which looks like it's a separate function of the file. But here we go. This is the type of thing I'm looking for. So I wanted to see whether the interesting. I don't see a zip file, so let me look back here and go back to this. I want to see if the zip files here somewhere. Is it that one? This is not zipped up. I guess this is the Lambda handler to use Express. Okay, fine. App.js. None of these are zipped right now. Good take. That's importing the package Express, which we saw. Is it going to create the... Let's go take a look. Okay. Unzipping inputs. Oh, because it would have zipped it up. Let's go take a look again at what comes before this. So I'm curious. I want to see, are there any other... What's the remove? Is metrics. Interesting. Does get clients, is this where things get... Yes, gateway. Okay. I guess it's just creating connections to those API. Okay, so they can talk to those. Interesting. That's an interesting way to do it. Okay. So now let me go back. I want to be sitting in the utils class here. So get clients really just gets the empty objects for the AWS SDK, which is all good. That's what get clients does. Await package express. So this is Okay, so creator update function role, meta role, creator update lambda, alias, update API. Okay. So these steps, actually, this is going to make life a little bit easier. So I can actually copy, I want to probably copy the utils class. The only difference is that I'm really not going to be using express so much. Might not even need to worry about this. I would want to do this. So this creator update lambda. What this does is instance inputs and the clients. Okay. Right, so it's looking for an existing Lambda function. Yeah, it's trying to retrieve an existing Lambda. So if there is no Lambda ARN, is it there you go, create Lambda. Okay. So create Lambda. If there's a VPC config, which, okay, that's interesting. We could support that if you needed to. Nice. So this instance contains all the details about the Lambda itself, like the name of the Lambda function, the handler itself, so where the handler file is. Interesting. Nice. Okay. So really, it just does everything. Okay. Now we understand some of the basics. We can actually reuse a lot of the code that exists in this Express.js component to do what we need to do. So I'm going to try and do that. Let's go ahead and start pulling some of the stuff into our own code. So I'm going to come here and sorry, I need to find this one. We have the source folder. Okay, so utils.js is what we want to copy, pretty much. I think I'm actually going to pull all of these files in. So, okay, so that requires an npm init there. So let's do that. Let's go to source npm init. Yeah, I'm just going to copy the package.json. Not even going to go that far. So let's just do a new file, package JSON. And go ahead and grab the contents. You can see there's next to nothing in here. Nice. And it's going to include this SDK extra. So this SDK extra is an npm module created by Serverless to help you use the AWS SDK a little bit more easily. It's actually pretty cool. So I'm going to grab that and chuck that into... Oh, no, well, in here. Go ahead and save that. And then we can do an npm I to install all of that. Let it do its thing. Shouldn't take too long. Here's my ID prompting me to do that. Alrighty, so the next file that we're going to grab out of here is going to be the utils.js. Oh, I keep doing that. Actually, I'm going to close this so it's not in our way anymore. Alright, there's my beautiful wife. Utils.js we need to create, so let's go ahead and... oh wait, is this? Needs to be in there. Refactor, fine, there we go. Alright, so new file, utils.js, and then we can come up back here, and I'm just going to grab all the content of this utils.js file. This is essentially created by one of the guys at Serverless, exactly as it sounds. It's a little utility, a collection of utility functions that you can use for AWS stuff. Actually, I'm just going to go back and look at the raw. Then I can control A copy. Much easier to do that. And just paste that in. Right. That to give us the space we need. Come on. Right, so we've got all of that in. Okay. So while that's busy, I'm back here. So now we've got all the utility stuff that might be useful. Let's go ahead and grab this serverless.js. And again, I'm going to grab it as is because I'm going to make changes to this class. File. Righty. So some of it we'll use, some of it we won't. But I'm going to name this similar to API async event. Not a very, I guess it's not a great name, but it's going to do for now because we don't need much more. All right, so a lot of the stuff is going to be done for us now. We don't need to worry about. So doing, funny. All right, let's enable that. Okay. So this, for example, looking for keys, that's going to be checked for us now automatically. Let's change this message because it's going to be deploying API. Throw error on domain change. So automatically we've got domain support. That's built into components, which is pretty cool. We don't really need to worry about that very much. So that's fine. We're going to have this domain stuff. Validate. Yeah, this is to validate the timeout setting. So we're going to leave that. Name, region. We don't need to change any of this. This gets all the clients. It's a package express. I don't think we need to do this. So right now, actually, package express is not something we need to do. And that means I can go, actually, maybe I should. Yeah, go back to here. See where package express is. Here it is in my utils class. My utils function or whatever file. And I'm going to actually remove this is zipping files. So press and I'm going to come up here and remove all of this. Actually, it's not going to be needed because we don't need, and this section here is, I don't need this for my, I'm just going to remove this entire commented section. Yeah. Okay. Great. All right, so that helps. We can go back to this package express now and remove it because it no longer exists. Okay, so this is going to create or update function role. So that's fine. That's the roles. Create or update meta. Let's go see what this does. Actually, I'm going to go back and see what this does. I want to see it has a role name. Just trying to set up the right permissions in IAM. Okay, this is only if you explicitly set an IAM role as well. And role name. So this doesn't. Trying to see if it links to a specific Lambda function yet. It doesn't. This essentially just creates the role, so that's good. Okay. Want to make sure about that. And this meta role, I'm not entirely sure what this does. Okay, just another IAM role that's needed to allow. Oh, the assume role for components. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that it can retrieve CloudWatch logs and stuff for monitoring capabilities. So that's fine. We do want that. Okay. All right. Here is the create or update Lambda, and this is potentially multiple times. So the idea with this entire thing is that you're going to have multiple Lambda functions. So I'm going to go ahead and create the underscore source directory, and this is where we're going to start doing some of our custom stuff right now, I think. What I want to do is create my custom Lambda functions, my default Lambda functions, as it were. Go back here. Here's our source. And here we have a single app.js file. Let me just take a look at this package JSON. This is essentially just for Express. Okay, so that's fine. We are not doing just Express. Actually, if I go back a little bit, I can see here is the actual handler. Okay, so must remember that when it comes to altering the existing code, the actual Lambda function handler exists in this Express folder. And yeah, so the code, yeah, and I want it to be in _source for mine because I don't have Express. I don't need to break it out like that. So yeah, I'm going to go back here. And I can, and ultimately there's going to be five Lambda functions I need. So let's go ahead and create them actually, so we can sort of see what that looks like. I need to just take a look at this reference. I want to be sure there wasn't something additional done with this handler. Is this just a standard? Yeah, it's just a regular old standard handler. Yeah, so this is just a standard old handler. Let's go back here and create. So I'm just going to create blank files for now, so we have the skeleton of it, so we know what's coming. This is going to be get entity. We need the CRUD. We need basically the sort of 5 CRUD elements here. So to get a single entity, to get list, get entity list .js. We then need to create entity.js. Then need to update entity.js. And then delete. Delete entity.js. So we've got our basic files we need. Let's start with the create because you can't retrieve anything unless they exist. So I've got the handler here to export. I'm actually going to rename this. Sorry, one sec. I just want to see. Is there any reason? No. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to write it that way. And I don't want to call this handler because that's just a generic name. I'm going to call this create entity. One of the things we're also going to be adding on for this component is DynamoDB. All right, so because we are AWS Serverless Express, I've never heard of that, but we probably don't need that. We don't need to include the AWS SDK because the AWS SDK is included by default in all Lambda functions. So keeping the small is really useful. It means our deployments and stuff is going to be a lot quicker. Let's go ahead and just create our entity now. Seem to be in demand today. We want to go ahead and create our entity, which means we need to take a look at the event object and parse out our data. I think I'm going to leave validation settings for another time. Get the queue up. So we're going to do the create means a post request, means we're going to have a body. So this means body is going to be equal to JSON pause the event dot body, and you probably want to catch that because there could probably be an error that comes out of that, and that's going to be error. We'll probably want to log that out in some way. Remember, these are Lambda functions. This is going to log into CloudWatch when it executes. Parsing the JSON body. And then we want to probably concatenate on the body itself. So event.body. Oops, event. Yeah. And then we can return the error. No, this is an API gateway connected function. So we want to return a status code of 500, oh no, 400, because it's a bad client. And that's it really. You don't want to return the specific error message necessarily because that might be too informative. Okay. Right, so no, I need to define body before the try. So const let body an empty object, and then body is equal. Cool. Right. So one of the things we want to do then is essentially just save this entity into a DynamoDB table. We don't necessarily know the... Okay, so we're going to assume, for simplicity for our own function, that there is going to be an ID field. So if type of body dot ID is equal to define, oh geez, defined or or body dot ID is equal to null. So if the ID doesn't exist or is set to nothing, we will have to return status code 400. You can refine these status codes later. I'm just putting something so we have some kind of response. The body is going to be JSON stringify, and I want to say error is ID thing. Great. So we have the ID is going to go back. And right, so we kind of have a primary key ID to use for DynamoDB. Bear in mind, this is meant to be very simple. So we're going to keep it like this for now. Just thinking through. Next step is writing it into DynamoDB. So let DynamoDB equal new AWS dot DynamoDB dot document. Whoops. Client. Okay. And then we can do a await DynamoDB dot put. That we need to specify the create params. The params we need in DynamoDB for this. The table name is going to be process.env. We're going to create an environment variable in Lambda for this. And I'm curious now, I need to look and see, does this existing Express use environment variables in any way for configuration value? Let's go take a look. See this creator update Lambda. Will this allow us to add environment variables to the Lambda function? Yes, update Lambda config. That's possibly where it gets done. So let's go take a peek there. There, okay, cool. So we can add environment variables. Nice. So we can assume that we're able to add environment variables into our Lambda function as well. So what we need there is to know what the table name is, because this will probably be dynamic based on the entity value provided by the person who's using our component. You've also got to think about how the parts that might be might change in value, and in this case, we're going to yes, table name. And now we want to specify the item in DynamoDB, and the ID column by default going to be called ID for us, and that's going to be obviously body. Whoops, body dot ID. And then what I want to do is I just need to look something up here quickly. Let's see. Not that. Okay. So really what I need to do now is I want to add the rest of the columns that are possibly here based on the body past. And I don't know what that might be. It could be anything. So I need to iterate through my body object, my object created from this JSON parse to pick up all the potential items that might be in there. So the way I'm going to do that is using a for loop. Basically, the one listed here on the mozilla.org page. Nice and simple. So, oh, forgive me. Let's go ahead and grab, we want const key. Actually, just going to copy and paste it straight in and then edit it. Easiest way to do that. Of object entries object, and that's going to be body. We don't need a console log, but what we do need is to add that in. So on create params on e, make that equal to dot items item, add a new key and call that value. There we go. And I'm actually going to console log this out. I don't want to do this. Just so we have a way to debug this when we do it. Okay. So really what that's going to do is add those items. Okay, cool. So all of those will be added. And now we can actually do the create params. And we need to make sure that we make it a promise. Otherwise, it won't await correctly. That'll end up adding it in. I could, of course, do a try catch block here, just in case. Just in case something goes funky with our call to DynamoDB. And log that out. There was a problem saving to DynamoDB. Let's correct that. And then I can return, whoops. In this case, this will be a 500 because we now have an error internally that has broken stuff. I like to log a bit more than just that, so I'm going to log the full error. Then I'm also going to log the create params, but I like to label it first just so that I can see what that is. What else do I need here? That'll actually do it for debugging. And literally, if that doesn't fail, it'll work. So I can just go ahead and return status code 201 because it was successfully created. Okay. Nice. Nope. Hey, object. Not quite, because I'm taking a type of. Type of converts whatever the type is into a string. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So yeah, there may be bugs here. I don't know. We're going to be experimenting with this. Cool. So that should be enough for the create entity. Now I'm going to go on to the get entity. I'm just going to grab this to start with. There we go. Now we want to retrieve an item, and this will probably have a path parameter of ID. So let's go ahead and grab the ID and just store it in a variable for us to make it a little bit easier. Let's event.path, oops, .id, I guess we're going to call it. And then I need to just create a DynamoDB object, AWS .dynamodb document client. Oh, and if anybody watching, if you have questions, queries, feedback, It doesn't even have to be related with what's on the screen. Feel free to chat. We are dual streaming on YouTube and Twitch right now, so yeah, don't be shy. Alright, so I've got my DynamoDB object. What I'm going to do is open up, I never remember all the syntax always. In my opinion, it's impossible. But what I'm going to do is the DynamoDB node SDK. Sorry, frog in the throat. Is that the one? No, it's not it. Page 1. There we go, that's the one I'm looking for. So let's grab this here and we can all take a look at it together. And if I can take a look, I want to use document client. I don't want to use this one. Document client is a variation of the... where is it now? Ugh. Where's the document client documentation instead? Is it here somewhere? There we go. That's the one I want. All right, document client is just a simpler, I don't want you to call it wrapper on the original DynamoDB SDK. You can see there's a much smaller set of methods that are much easier to use. I want to use a get, so it makes it nice and quick. Yeah, and it's a very quick little, okay, so that's what I want to use. Key, table name, and key. All right, so this is table. I need a const get params. We need to build a parameter object. Well, I like DynamoDB, I don't need to build arcane SQL syntax. I can just use an object to query for stuff. And like my create entity, I want to copy this environment variable that I'm going to access over there. And then it's about the key, which is going to be ID, and the value is going to be ID. Okay. And that's it. Okay. Then here I'm going to say I need to response is going to be an empty object so that I can do a try catch just on the there. Cool, and then I can do response is equal to await on my DynamoDB dot get query, pass the get param and make sure that it returns as a promise. Righty. And then I just want to log out. There was an error retrieving item. We log out the actual error. We log out, I think, the get params because it'll be good to know which parameters we used that resulted in error. And then we can return our status code 500 to the calling client to say there was a problem. So sorry. Oops. Once we have the response, I'm just going to take a look again what this looks like. Okay, so we automatically get this entire object because we're using the await syntax. We don't get a data object separately, so then we have an item. So I guess we just check for that. If, again, type of. I prefer to use type of just because it's a little bit clearer for me. If type of response, whoops, dot item is, if it's equal to undefined, or response dot item, come on, is equal to null, I want to then return my status code is going to be 404 probably because it doesn't exist. And otherwise, return status code 200. And we make the body equal to what was returned, the item itself. But interesting. This is going to, it's going to return this as with the .s stuff, if I remember correctly. Remember now. Hmm. Just look through this and actually say, yes, what we'll do is just leave it like that for now, and when we test, we can see what it does. So ultimately, this is returning the actual item, a serializable JavaScript object. Cool, so I can JSON it. So I'm going to do exactly that. And we may need to reformat this later, but we'll worry about that later. Response dot item. And that's it. That's our get done. Cool. Now we need the list. And grab this part again. And now we're doing a query. We're not going to be doing a... Oh, that's going to be interesting. We're not actually querying on the table contents because we're not building a query engine. We're just returning a list. So technically we could do a scan because we're going to return everything that we retrieve from the database, from the table. I don't want to spend time trying to make this fancy. This is about getting a plausible prototype up and running, and we can come back later and optimize it for things like pagination on the queries and stuff like that. So I think I'm just going to do a scan here on the table so that we can just see and make sure that we retrieve a list as intended. And then allow further optimization later with things. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Just need to refresh that. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's begin. Now, this will have no parameters passed to it, so we don't need to worry about that. It will just straight up go scan. There's nothing else to really do. Let's go find the scan documentation here as well, just so we have that up for when we need it right there. The parameters that you'll need at the minimum is the table name. I think that's it. I don't normally use scan a ton because it tends to be a bit expensive to use on a regular basis, but ultimately the basics of a scan is retrieve everything from table. So let's go ahead and just do that then. So constant is going to be our DynamoDB object that we need. New aws.dynamodb.document plant. Okay. And then we need our scan params, which is going to be this again. I copy and paste it because I like to avoid typos. So, right, so we have our scan parameters, and then we need our let response is going to be the empty object again. So we could do a try catch block where response is going to be equal to await dynamodb.scan scan params and a promise. Catch it with an error, and I will just grab this here because we already have it. I need to retype that, but I can just replace that. And now it's going to return a different type of object. So let's take a look at the structure of that. Further down. Here it is, items. So this is an array. Yeah. So if response dot count is equal to 0, it means it didn't return anything. We then need to return a 404 because there are no objects to return. Come on. Oh, people are watching. I can't type. There we go. All right. Otherwise, if that doesn't return that, that means we need to return the actual items. So, thinking this through a little bit. Oh, we had a few. We're having drop frames right now. Looks like we are back. We had a few dropped frames there, apparently. Okay, otherwise we're good. Great, okay. So I'm now going to... again, trying to think this through a little bit. You know what, I'm just going to return the items object right now. I'm not going to worry about reformatting it too much right now. Let's just go ahead and do that. Return with a status code of 200 and make our body JSON.stringify the response.items. And yeah, this will probably need reformatting later, but let's worry about that when we have a chance to actually look at what's happening. Okay. So that's that. Now we can do an update. And I just realized I have my create using a put. And a put will essentially do an update as well. The dynamodb.put will insert or update. I'm going to leave that for now. We can change this. So we can actually make this. Ooh, okay. Okay, it's giving me browser data there, but whatever. That put, you can actually add conditional expressions on to say if it doesn't exist, which it can use to then just make sure things don't exist or do exist, whichever you prefer. But I'm going to ignore that for now, and we can come back to that later. Because we are still prototyping a bit here. So update entity is very similar then to create. In fact, it's pretty much going to be the same as create, except we will need to... The ID is going to be coming from the event, the path parameters. So let's do that. Let's do let ID equal to event.path parameters.id. This will be part of the URL path, the ID of what we're updating. The body's going to contain the actual content, and it may contain an ID as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this be the ID value that we store up top instead. We use this variable instead of what might be in the body. We may need to come back and look at that later in case somebody does add a... Maybe I can actually take a look for that. So let's go ahead and see if... Just do a check here. If the ID is equal to body... actually, no, let's do it after. We want to do this after we check for the existence of body ID. Then if it's not equal, sorry. That means there's some inconsistency there that we don't know how to handle. So we return status code 400, and we leave it at that for now. And I'm going to actually log here. IDs differ. IDs differ, just so we have some log of what happens there. Okay, for our own sake, for debugging later. Okay, that's good. Otherwise, this will work. So I'm actually going to just tweak this. Shift F6, make this update params. Go. That'll be update params just for consistency. That should do it. If it's the same key value, it's going to overwrite. If it's not, it'll keep what's there. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Right, so that's our update. Now the delete is essentially the same as the get, but we're going to end up deleting. So I'm going to copy and paste that because really what it boils down to is just changing that. So let's go take a look at what a delete all looks like. It's pretty much just the key. Yep, that's it. So you go ahead and do that. This is going to be delete param. Alrighty, and then this is going to be delete, and we just changed that as well. Deleting the item to be consistent. And that, okay, this is not going to work. What is the response from delete? Yeah, nothing. There's either an error or it succeeds. Okay, so we don't need this. We do need that, and we can take the body out because that's just deleted. Alrighty. And that's it. We now have our base Lambda functions in. Cool. So now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take a very quick little break. Just use the bathroom and grab a drink. And then we will return so that we can continue building our component. We now have the basics up and running, but we'll see you guys shortly. Just have a quick break. All right, we are back and let's continue. Hello, folks. And for anybody who is just joining now, welcome to the stream. We are dual streaming on YouTube and Twitch today. And I guess I just need to get the Twitch chat up just in case. And today we are building a component. We are looking at, this is really one of my first real time actually building a proper component for, well, serverless component. And before the break, what we did was we essentially got some basic skeleton stuff up and running. We copied a configuration file for our new component from an existing one. We copied over a few of the files that will be useful, like a utils.js, which has a lot of useful stuff in it. This is the serverless.js file from the Express component that has a lot of stuff we can use already. Just a great way to get up and running without having to do everything from scratch. And the goal of this component is to allow you to create an API. So you pass it an entity name like customer or product or whatever it is that you want to keep track of in a database with the CRUD that you normally have with a REST API, the create, get specific entity, get a list of entities, update and delete. The idea here is that when you use this component, that you essentially just give it an entity name like product, customer, vehicle, whatever it is that you want to keep track of, and it'll go and spin these out into your AWS for you, these 5 Lambda functions, create API gateway endpoints for each of these as well, and then give you those endpoints, and now there you go, and store the stuff in DynamoDB, and that's it. You've got an API up and running, single API endpoint connected to a single Lambda function. Ultimately, the goal as well is to have the events from this all be propagated out into an asynchronous tool like SNS or EventBridge or whatever, that you can then have this data transmitted around to any of your other services that you may have, which would be pretty neat. Nice, delicious cup of coffee. Alrighty, and then eventually the idea is that somebody might be able to write their own Lambda functions, and instead of using these default ones that I'm going to include as a part of the component, maybe you want a default Lambda function of your own. So yeah, there's potentially a lot to try and do here. So we're not necessarily going to get to do everything today, but we'll carry on and see how far we can get. It's pretty cool. So far what we've done is we've gotten these 5 done, and the next step now is to start configuring our component in a way that's going to make use of these. So the way to do that is this serverless.js file contains the elements we need. The serverless.js in a component describes what happens when you run certain commands, like the deploy command here, for example. If somebody uses my component and then does a configuration in their serverless.yaml file and then types deploy, what happens then? All right, so because we've copied this from the Express component, a lot of the stuff is already here for us. So here is a check for AWS credentials, which is great. The component's core behind the scenes is automatically handling a lot of the stuff for us, which is pretty nice. The credentials are either retrieved from the local machine or from your connection in the serverless dashboard. Pretty handy. This is just a thing to show that we're going to be deploying our API. We've edited this already now. Here, this is domain management. So really, we could have domain, but I'm actually going to comment this out. I don't want to support domains right now. Maybe we'll come back to this in future, but let's just keep things simple so we can get some basics working, and then we can iterate over it and improve it in other ways. Do a timeout check, that's fine. That's not really a big deal. This is looking at the app and regions. So this is a fine check to just leave it as is, unless I want to change the default or something. Now this is get clients, and this is going to retrieve AWS clients from the AWS SDK for us. So I'm just going to leave this. It grabs everything we need. And the reason we chose the Express component to tweak on, and I see Yash Wavhal is asking where is public. I'm not entirely sure what the question means, so feel free to just rephrase that. Yep, maybe I'll understand better with slightly different words. But yeah, so get clients, we're going to leave this because this is grabbing a bunch of AWS SDK clients. Then we have create or update function role, and this is creating a role in IAM that we can use on our Lambda functions, which is fine. The meta role needed so that the component's core can retrieve metrics information if we need it, so that's fine. And here is the interesting part, create or update Lambda. I'm trying to figure out this. here has a bunch of state information. And I wonder if this is custom for the express function. The component instance, that's component inputs. So this looks for a instance.state.lambda. Single lambda. Oh, it's state. I see. So it's looking to see if that's okay. So it doesn't exist. So if it doesn't, how does it know? Ah. Okay, so what's happening here is this creator update lambda is looking at the instance. So every component stores state, and the state is stored in essentially as a part of your serverless framework account. And this is first checking to see if you've already deployed this. So remember, this has been used in the express component. But what this does is check to see if you've already deployed before and if you have a lambda with this name existing. If there is a state entry with the lambda ARN. What will probably happen for us is we have 5 lambdas at least. Well, we'll always only have 5. That's the aim of the component. This is for updating that lambda function. But what if we have multiple lambda functions? So I probably need to make changes to this function here. And this is in the utils.js. So this is ultimately a single file full of functions that we can edit for our own purposes. Just give me a second to reply to some. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, what we need to do is find a way, because we have the express component will only ever have one lambda function, which is fine. This works great for that use case, but ours will have multiple. So, we will need to go through this multiple times. I'm trying to think of the cleanest way to do this, because we could just have an if statement that looks for all 5, and if it doesn't find it, then deploy it, then creates it. And update lambda. Oh, here's the code that actually gets deployed as well. Look for the. Okay. Okay, so here's the create lambda that initially does things. Okay, so this is going to set up parameters such as environment variables. Very nice. That's exactly what we want. We're probably not going to support layers of any kind, I don't think. Zip paths. Zip path set up. I'm not entirely sure where. Interesting. Alrighty. What we need. Trying to understand the existing code here to see how it knows what file to upload into AWS for me. Hmm. The instance.state is something that this is the state stored centrally. So I can see after doing a create lambda, this is setting the state, the name, the lambda name, and so on, so that when it does a create lambda, it's carrying that data across. Hmm. Okay. There's the lambda name. This is the description from. So inputs means that's from the serverless.yaml file. Instance means that's what's stored in the global state handler. Hmm. Environment variables. So you see here, you can set environment variables, which is nice. Here's where does zip path come from? I'm actually going to search for the zip path here. It's confusing me where that's coming from, and there's only two places. Interesting. It's not in here anywhere. How do you know? Is that just created from... maybe it's from... It could actually be the default setting. Let's take a look through here again. Yeah, we're not going to support layers necessarily. No, we're not going to support layers necessarily. Let's just take that out for now. VP. Yeah, there is nothing about zip file here. Not entirely sure where that would come from. This is fine. This is populating the current configuration and stuff. I'm going to go back here. And maybe one of these added it. So let's take a look, or go through this again. Creator update lambda comes in here. We pass the current state of the instance. The current instance state, I should be saying, which is here. It stores the existing state because of prior deployments, or nothing, because there is no prior deployment. There won't be a state if there's no prior deployment. So this will set these for state. What else is set? Let's just go through and see. So nothing here sets any state values. This doesn't set it. This does explicitly .name.region here. So that's fine. Get clients shouldn't be setting anything because it's not passing it by reference. Better update function role, that won't be setting anything. If this is the first time, this is essentially blank except for this. these values set here. See anything else that's going to... Okay. So if I go to create or update Lambda, right away, I've got this instance thing with very little data in it. Inputs, which is the serverless that you want, and clients, which is my connections to all the various parts of AWS. So I'm going to look for instance state Lambda ARN. This is walkthrough Lambda name. They don't exist, so I go straight to here. And if this is not set, so if Lambda ARN does not exist, we need to do this piece here. Okay. So now we're setting the Lambda name is equal to the state name, which is set. Yeah. Okay. So we have a name, and then we concatenate on function to it. Okay. Okay. Nice little warning there in comment. Okay. So this concatenates. So this is only for the express function. We can change this as much as we like because our component doesn't exist yet. But anyway, we can concatenate on something here for a Lambda name, except ours. So I'm not going to worry about what we want to do yet. I just want to understand the existing code. So what I need to now look through, so there's a log that says the Lambda function was not found. We've added a Lambda name state. Now let's go create the Lambda. Okay. We're creating the Lambda and we're potentially going to have multiple retries of this function. Okay. We're going to grab a VPC config from inputs if it exists, and it might not. Then we're going to set up some params. The function name, which will be the Lambda name. The code is blank. Okay. The description from the serverless.yaml, or a default if it doesn't exist. Handler. Where is handler set? I don't see where handler is set. Interesting. Is it here somewhere? Did I miss handler? Handler state. I don't understand. Even this says it doesn't know what you're talking about. Okay, so there's a question mark there that we need to worry about. Okay, so here, so setting memory, that's fine. Publish, we wanted to publish. Choosing the role that was set before. Okay, so this is where it's this stuff here. Where is it? Here we go. Updating this stuff. Okay. So I just need to take a look at this quickly because maybe this does set handler. Nope, doesn't. Even the meta role stuff doesn't set the value for that handler that's missing. Anyhow. Alright, so create or update Lambda, then we go create Lambda like we were before. So that's set from that. Node.js 12. I guess this is more like if we've set a role ARN in our serverless.yaml previously, otherwise use the default, which is fine. Node 12, the inputs, or 29 as default, any environment variables, that's all good. Any layers that are configured as a part of the inputs, so that's fine. Yeah, now this is where it bugs me. What if it doesn't have the path? How does that work? Right. So it looks like to ask some questions. take a screenshot of it quickly. Okay. So, assuming we figure out where that zip path comes from, it's then going to create the function without any code, which is fine. You can do that. It basically just creates an empty Lambda object. Then we want it to finishes. This is all about the retries. Alrighty, so it retries a few times. And it tries to create Lambda again. Right, so that happens, and then it'll try to update it, because now that we have a base Lambda object, now I can try and upload the code. Update Lambda code, which then uses that zip path again to grab the files up. I just realized it actually might be doing that already. Yeah. Oh yeah, so it is setting the code. So it'll do this the first time, it'll just grab the code. Okay, if I look at line 134. Weird. Oh, jeez. Okay, so we deleted some code earlier, and apparently that is what was causing our problems. So let me go and correct this problem. All right, so we're back here. Okay, and if we go back to here, let's go walk through this very quickly again. Create to update Lambda, blah, blah, blah. We know that then it goes to create Lambda here. Now we're over here. Actually, I need to go back a little bit, because there's another piece we missed in the let's just up here, I guess. Everybody can see what I'm looking at. If I go back to the serverless, the JS here, we removed this section here. Yep, and that's apparently what is called where that is coming from. So what we'll probably end up doing is and which line was that on? Around 55. Yeah, over here. Okay, I'm going to add this back, and we've now got this package express, and what this is doing is that it's going to grab all the files from the source folder, which is what we want, and we may just rename this into something else. I'm going to leave it for now, and we'll worry about that in a little bit. Okay, here it's looking for the Express app. So right, so yeah, here's zip path. You can see it's setting that zip path. Okay. So what we're going to get with just leaving it like this is that we're ultimately going to get our files pushed up anyway. But it's assuming a single handler. So this is also probably where the... Yeah, here we go. That's where handler is set. Yep, here we go. So we need to do this multiple times. Okay. So here's where we can start making some nice changes. We can go ahead and tweak this. So this is going to be source and not handler. We are going to call this. All right, so this is create entity. I realize I need to change these names. This is going to be, I didn't do this before. Delete entity. Be get entity. They need to be unique. And get entity list. Get entity list and update entity. Yep. Update entity. Awesome. And there. And that means that we can come back to where we were looking at utils.js. And here we can, I think we're going to create multiple handlers here, and we can then iterate over this handler value. So let's just do that. We're going to say instance dot state dot create handler is equal to all of this, but we are going to be making this create entity and create entity, and then we're going to do that 4 more times. 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and this is going to be the delete handler. This is going to be the update handler. This is going to be the get handler. This is going to be the get list handler. And I'm going to just do that for now. So we have the working one. We know works there for reference. And now I can continue all of it. Okay. Then I need to obviously update here. So this is going to be delete entity. Yep, and it's going to be update entity. Oops. And then this is going to be get entity. And then get entity list. Great, so that's our 5 Lambda functions. Make sure we save that. We don't need the Express app, and this doesn't do anything except copy it. So I'm actually going to comment this out. And it's going to create a zip path. And this is ultimately what's going to go up into Lambda. Okay, so this should work. So every single Lambda will have a copy of all the other Lambdas, but that's kind of what happens anyway when you deploy with the serverless framework. So that's not as big a deal. Maybe later we can optimize that so it only uploads the individual pieces. It'll create a zip path per specific handler, but we'll worry about that again. It's an optimization we can worry about another time. All right, so what we want to look at now is, let's go back to our create or update Lambda. And again, this is looking for a specific Lambda ARN, so we need to probably change this. Or we create multiple items like this. I'm thinking we just deploy all 5 of them at once. That means I'm going to set up several Lambda ARNs. And let's look at verify existing Lambda. Or let's try to think. The downside is it's passing this object around all the time. It's not looking specifically for this Lambda ARN. Thinking. We could loop over this repeatedly for each of our Lambda functions. That's a possibility. I'll think this through. Where we set up our multiple handlers. What's going to happen is it's going to run this create lambda, which then is going to look for a single handler. So yeah, we're probably going to have to loop over. Yeah. Or at least call each of these individually for each oh, that's an idea. I think maybe we copy and paste this for each of our 5 handlers. So in other words, create or update, create lambda. This one is just going to handle for that. Okay. That means we need to alter this lambda ARN value here. Shift F6 on that one. This can actually be create lambda ARN rather, and create lambda name. Okay. This will be create function. Okay. That does else. Right, so the create lambda front, so this is okay, so update lambda we're gonna have to look at it in a second because this will ultimately affect the lambda version. What it means this create lambda call is not going to work on its own. We will need create lambda, create update lambda, create get lambda. I don't necessarily like that because that's all the same code and we're just going to copy and paste into multiple functions that pretty much do the same thing with just a name change. How do we do this? Okay, that's not. Yeah, this is all based on the assumption that there's a single lambda function. I wonder if... I'm not going to bother with that for now. Let's go through to... Create or update. There we go. That's no. Next. Here we go. This is where we made the change. I'm actually going to remove this little reference. No, I can't. Too late. I can't. Okay. So let's do a for loop to fix something briefly. We are back. Okay. I think I'm actually going to try and do a loop here. What's tricky about this is okay, so I'm actually going to undo my changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to loop through this and create other variables with the right values that we need. Let's do okay, we want to do just do a little quick array of our Lambda functions that we have so we can understand. And we have create entity, we have delete entity, we have get entity, get t list. Oops. And we have update entity. Okay, so that'll work. Now, yeah, so for const lambda handler of lambda array. Okay, we have this loop. It's going to go through, and it's called lambda handler. We did set previously in the package express. So let's take a look at package express. We set all of this up. This is the handler names themselves, not the ARNs, because there are no ARNs yet. Okay, so really that's what we need. Again, I'm going to keep this as create or update lambda. So that doesn't change, but now, all right, so this will still work because I'm going to copy this over now. Let's do one piece at a time. If instance.state dot, and instead of a dot, this is now a variable. This can be lambda handler. Let's just do it with the template. May contain some consistency. And we do, that's instance.state ARN. I'm going to say dash ARN as well. Okay. Need dot. And instance.state. Okay, so this is easier. All of that. Drop that, remove the ARNP. Yeah. Why do we not? Oh, yes, you're right. And here. Forgot that. All right, so there we go. That replaces this. This makes it dynamic. Cool. I'm going to grab this again. Actually, I'm going to set this variable. So lambda ARN is equal to that. Okay. Just to make life a little easier for us. And then I can do that. That's sort of range. Okay. And then I need the... Oh, we just have Lambda handler, so that's fine. Okay. Remove all of that. Let's make life a little easier. Stop making it complicated. Go. There we go. Okay, so that works. We are work from home, so there is family walking around. Okay. I do need that, though. All right, so that works. Now, basically, I'm creating my Lambda ARN up front. I can reuse it later. And do that and that. That's going to get that Lambda with that Lambda name. So the Lambda name is... okay, I need to tweak these as well. So grab that and make it that. Grab that and make it that. Well, okay, so that's one part done. Now we need to do this section. Now we're creating it for the first time, so just a matter of going through one by one and finding these entries. And I don't want to do the autocomplete because it might be different depending on where we go. So this name works here, but this is for... That might not actually work. I actually want this to be that. Yeah, it has to be the same name as the handler itself there because it's not we don't have just one Lambda function. And there. No, I can't do that. That... Wait, let me see. What I actually want to do is this. No, not that. Grab that. That. Okay. Oh, wait. Thinking this through. Okay. Okay, so instance state Lambda name. this looks like it's actually going to create a separate one. Let's just go through this again. Second. You can take a look at the previous one. So it's checking if it already exists. I think I may have messed up a little bit. Let me actually, I'm going to have to start from scratch. Sorry, folks. Let's just do that. I'm going to just start this again. So I need to take this functionality and basically copy it over. So verify if the existing Lambda exists. Okay. This is going to check if the, okay, I remember what I was thinking of. We need to check one at a time. So that's the create entity Lambda at a time. So actually, I'm going to bring it back. Fine, it does work. Okay. And it adds -arn. Okay. Let's just remember, whenever we set and store this ARN, when we create the Lambda, we need to add the -arn for consistency. Okay, so that actually works fine. This section, though, I need to just redo quickly because I think I misunderstood this a little bit. So what we do here is bring the original back before we fight with this. So if the Lambda ARN, okay, so we have this Lambda ARN here. We grab that and set it. It's not gonna. Yeah, obviously I'm being silly. What I need to do here is actually just I just want the value for Lambda ARN. I don't need it to resolve into the instance of state. That's been done here. Okay. Fix that. What I do want to do is this. I want to set this Lambda handler value to be Lambda handler there function, because we can't rely on name because we have more than one function. Okay. That dot. And we need to copy this. That. Okay. Now we create Lambda. Okay, maybe we keep the create Lambda for after. Interesting. Because really, we pass in the whole instance, and that instance is going to contain all 5 Lambda functions, and only one of them at this point might need to be created. It could be the first, the third, the second, the fifth, the fourth. It doesn't matter. So we need some way to discriminate the one that we're currently working on in our for loop for the create Lambda. We can't just send the whole instance necessarily, or if we do, we need to tell it which of the instances it needs to work on. Really, that's what this means. So let's just take a look at instance. What is it using instance for? So it's getting the Lambda name, which is what was set previously. The handler, which we know. Default, this is fine. We can continue to use this as is. The zip path is going to be the same for all of them, so that's fine. This we set previously. This version we haven't set. Oh, this is creating the function now. Okay, and then it's going to get it from there. Right, so that's where we need to set the version of the Lambda function once it creates it. Okay. This is ending up being a little more complicated than I expected at first. I think it's because we're trying to deploy multiple Lambda functions at a time. This is the first time I'm looking at any of this code. Okay, so this is doable. We might just need to pass... We probably need to pass not instance. Or we create a different object that has all the items we need. That could work. So let's try that. So what I'm seeing is I'm just going to open up a text editor here quickly. And let's just always on top. And what we want is we need Lambda name. Make this one smaller. Yeah. So what we need is that one. Instance. So let's find the other instances. Yeah. It's just get default description. That's interesting. Okay, we might have to look into that a little bit more. Maybe we can just not bother have a default of nothing. I'm actually going to change that right now. Instance, so we need that one. Instance needs... So I'm looking at this and... Okay, I'm going to take that, drop it in, and continue down, looking for more instance option. And then we see the zip path, so we're going to need to bring that across as well. And what else? Make it highlighted here. See it? Anything else? Oh, and there's the whole loop thing, but we can just pass the same instance through again, so that's fine. Right, so we have zip path, we have these. I'm going to just remove that and that. Okay. After Lambda version, what other instance do we need? Which you've already got up there, so I'm actually going to remove that. That is it. Okay, so let's go back to where we were with our creator update Lambda. And here's our create. So instead of passing the entire instance, we're going to pass a subset of it with our current Lambda specified. Okay, let's go and pass an object. And the first thing we need is state. And another subset of that. And this is called Lambda name. That Lambda name is... We actually created it, didn't we? State Lambda. There we go. That's our name. Okay. Bring this back up here. We then have handler, which is actually going to be instance state. There. Yep. And we have user role on, which is just going to be this already, the existing one. We're just going to carry that over. A lot of these are just going to be carried over from the existing values in instance. path that. The one that's going to be different here is Lambda arn is going to be instance state Lambda arn like so, and then Lambda version. I think though. No, this gets created. I actually don't have a Lambda arn. So that actually doesn't exist because it gets created and added in. So I actually need to edit it and edit it in this create Lambda here. And make this be the create. No, the, oh geez. It would be create if it was going through that on the loop. What I need to do is make it pass this value as a part of it. Do that. I'm going to pass this in with this object, sort of pseudo instance. And that means, on doing that, we go to create Lambda, and this is going to be instance.state. Oh wait, I need this basically. So actually wondering if I'm overcomplicating things for myself here now, but hey, carry on and see where this leads us. So this is actually going to be state dot current and below -arn. Move the dot and add these on instead. Now I need to access that. Okay, so now we're creating the arn for the first time. And now this also needs to be the exact same thing, just with version instead of arn. Okay, so if I go back to this here that we're working with, just move that down so I can see it's out of the way. Okay, okay, we're getting there, we're getting there. Okay, so this will now loop through and create a unique instance of our Lambda for each one. Okay. Now let's do this final piece because we've now handled this case. We've handled this case. Now we need to handle this one where it's updating. I'm going to grab this piece and add it on here. Update. And this is where we're going to, looks like we may have to do this kind of thing again over here. And then here as well. Then we grab the Lambda version. So interestingly, I can then go, let me just make that change now. I can grab the Lambda version here somewhere. Did I do that work? There we go. Right, this is fixed. There we go. I do that. This. Oh, what? On really? You go back to there. Wait, what? Now I'm very confused. Okay. I'm oh, that line. Okay. I don't know why I didn't just go through there like I wanted it to. But anyway, we want to, in our, it's because I've got bring an error out here. I can actually close this now. We need to update this. So in fact, this can be changed to be just Lambda handler. Over there. There we go. No. Like that. Already in the template tags. Okay. The ARN is probably going to be something similar that I need to describe. Yep, just dash ARN. But it's pretty much the exact same thing. But the word ARN. Okay. Oh, no, that's a bit too much. Remove that. Okay. Alrighty. So, I just want to keep that because we know that's the working section. Right, so this should help us iterate through and handle each of these individually. We're going to have to go through the rest and work through them as well. Why are you? Oh, because I do a return. I don't want to do a return. Why? No. I will return afterwards. Yeah, so just return null at the end of the loop. Okay. Return null. Also because this, just doesn't actually do anything with the value that's returned anyways. Okay, so we've been streaming now for a while and it's time for another break. So thanks so much for joining, folks. And if you do have any questions, anything like that, feel free to drop it in the chat. We're dual streaming on Twitch and on YouTube at the moment. So yes, feel free to thanks again for joining me, folks. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. I'm just going to go take a quick break, and we will continue building our component. Be right back. And I'm back. Thanks so much for sticking around, folks. And let's get back into looking at our component that we're busy building. So, quick sip of yummy coffee. So far, we're getting there. We're slowly making the changes we need. We're basically taking an existing component designed for a single handler and retrofitting it in order to deploy multiple. So it's going to be a bit of experimentation and iteration on this. And right now, we have been making changes to this creator update Lambda that it assumes is only going to be one and trying to make it work for 5. We've added these the names of our 5 handlers here that we're going to have. And the reason I can make this static, without having to be dynamic or look at a file system, is that this isn't a general Lambda deployment process. This is essentially an API with 5 handlers always. That's the point of this component. It's very specifically focused on doing a CRUD on specific entity type. So we haven't gotten to the interesting part of what that entity type looks like yet, or the DynamoDB table we might want to create to store data in. But I'm not sure if we're going to get to that today, but we're going to see how far we can get in the next little bit, and continue to see about making our component. So right now we've got our array of lambdas that we need to create or update. We've created the for loop. We've gone through and we check to see if this specific lambda exists. If it doesn't, we go and create it, pass this sort of pseudo instance object, so that the create lambda has the details of our specific lambda function and adds it in. That should work from there, or if it does exist, it doesn't update. And this is where we actually need to be careful. I just realized, because this is going to set the state if it exists, which is fine. If it doesn't exist, it just skips it, so that's all right. We don't need to worry about that. But here, if the lambda array does not exist, it's going to create the lambda function, or so we need to add an else. Previously, it was just returning from here, but we're in the middle of a for loop, so we're not going to do that. We just need to drop that into an else to handle that separately. Now each one should be handled uniquely, and then at the end, it's end of the for loop. It's the end of the for loop. It's going to return a null, as we can see up there. All right. So that is pretty much that. There's probably going to be some bugs and things we need to fix later when we test this, but let's continue looking at the next step in the process, because that's create or update lambda, but now we have this alias, so let's go take a look at what this means. So create or updates default or feature alias. Alrighty, and this is all for traffic shifting. Okay, it's not just for traffic shifting. Okay, here is a thing to get alias. Again, it looks like we have the need to loop here. Is Lambda version. Okay. Yeah, so here it's overriding whatever alias might be set. Fine. Okay. But remember, our Lambda versions are now no longer just a single Lambda version. We have it's one of 5. So it looks like if we're going to loop, I think our inputs won't be handling alias. Let's just take a look here if it requires aliases here. So here's input. And yeah, it doesn't actually have a thing, an input for an alias. I'm not entirely sure. It's just setting it. Okay, so it's just setting it. It's not actually using it. All right. fine. And this alias ARN will be generated by get alias. So let's go take a look at get alias quick. It's not a very long function, so that's good news. It just does a query into Lambda to get the alias of our specific Lambda name. Okay. Okay, so it looks like we need to go back there and do our... Let's just go grab our little array here. And then go update this alias. All right, so we add that in. That doesn't... Right, so we start with the for loop. I'm just going to copy the existing one because right here. And then we can drop it in there. All right, so we have our for loop and we keep the originals there and untouched. So this piece here, let's deal with this first. Keep that the same. This is different. So the Lambda version is again going to... Let's take a look at what we did here with Lambda version. We did something here with the Lambda version. There. No, come on. There we go. We go back to up that one. It's like, come on. Like so. All right, there we go. So now we're accessing the correct version for the Lambda. There we go. Inputs.traffic. Okay. This is only if you're doing traffic shifting stuff. So whatever, we'll leave it. Maybe we'll just be able to piggyback off of that. Then... Sure. Okay. We need to deal with this. You may need to override that instance object once again. I'm going to open this. Just trying to think. No, it's not good. Trying to see if... Oh. No. Okay. Let's go back here. We're going to create or update alias. And then we go to get alias. And then that should take us back. Nice. Okay. So now we've got the back button working. So that's nice. All right. So what we need is... Take a look at this. So what I'm going to do is copy this line. And then we can do that. And let's go look at get alias. What it needs out of instance is the name. That's it. Okay. It just needs the function name. Okay. Let's do this. So that is state. Lambda name, and that's going to be equal to the... we have to look at... Yeah, to see how Lambda name is done. The... Lambda name is this Lambda... That one. Yep. There we go. That's the Lambda name. That's all it needs, if I'm right. Instance is not called anywhere else in this entire function, so yep, we're good. Okay, so that is pretty much done. That's going to get the alias. Damn, I'm going to need to change that name. I can't just let it use that. Okay, so actually this I'm going to get rid of this line. I don't need anymore. I can't just make it use a single alias ARM because we have multiple. Yeah, multiple functions. Okay. You are going to be so. Alrighty, so now we have that. Okay,